from smart grids to health and well-being of citizens. And we've got a two-person team that's going to present to us on this one. Ross Hardy, the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Adyuvo, and SONJA PEDELL, Associate Professor and Director of Future Self and Design Living Lab Department Research Director. As I invite them to the stage, I'd just like to give you a very short bio for both of them. Ross began his healthcare career with the first 10 years as an Operating Department Practitioner in the UK and New Zealand. He covered all aspects of the patient journey, including surgery, anaesthetics, sterile services, endoscopy clinics and fracture clinics. He then moved into the medical technology industry and spent almost 20 years in strategic sales and marketing across primary, secondary and tertiary care providers in the public and private sectors. SONJA PEDELL, Associate Professor, she's Director of Swinburne's Future Self and Design Living Lab. The FSDS Living Lab has core development capabilities in the area of innovative socio-technical systems and design solutions for health and well-being with a focus on the ageing population. And they're going to tell us about how smart speedies can enhance the health and well-being of our citizens. Please come to the stage.
Okay, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm going to start off with a subject which I'm very passionate about because it's the core focus of my digital health startup, and it's a bit about chronic disease. And some of these numbers up here I find pretty frightening, and until I really got into my startup a while ago, like most people, kind of ignored it. But this is real. And my startup is focused on kidney disease, particularly children with kidney disease right now. But as a rule of thumb, we all have a part to play because 1 in 3 risk of kidney disease. When you hit 45, there's probably a few of us in here, you have a 1 in 4 risk of having 2 or more chronic diseases. And the really scary thing at the bottom there is that somebody dies every 25 minutes from kidney-related disease. So I guess by the time this quick presentation is over, if this was the population of the country, you've got to wonder if it's you that's going to die within the next half an hour. I mean, it's pretty dire, but it's pretty true. If we look at this chart, we all know that people are ageing. It's an often spoken about topic these days. But the interesting piece is here. We've got a 30% growth for those 60 and above, and the really scary one is the 85 years and above at the other end there. The Office of National Statistics in the UK are predicting that the average female life expectancy will be 100 years old in 2057. So that's not too far away, that's pretty dire. This is what I think is something that is really important. This age group is the largest by volume. They're the ones that are likely to have children. And they're also the ones that are changing the way that we consume healthcare, the way that they demand everything right now, the Ys, the Zs, the Millennials, and all those behind it. They have a lot of toys today that we never had as kids, but their expectation is quite different. Their expectation will change as they grow up and as they start having to look after you guys when you're retired, and then when you pass on, and who's going to look after them? What's the world going to be like when they retire? It'll be very different. So here's just a quick bit about kidney disease. I apologise for this graphic, it doesn't come up very well. But this is around how kidney disease prevalence is growing by region. And in terms of your postcode, chronic disease can be almost, I wouldn't say dictated, but indicates certainly what you will end up suffering with. So in red here, we've got the inner west of Sydney and West Metro of Brisbane. Twice the national prevalence of adults with signs of chronic kidney disease. We can't forget the Indigenous population. It's quite well publicised that they struggle with chronic diseases. 32% of the Indigenous population has chronic kidney disease today, and recently Gurumul passed away because he chose to actually stop dialysis. For those that are on dialysis, if you stop for whatever reason, you will die within 5 days. So kidney disease is incurable. But the takeout from this is that postcodes can really affect, and it was mentioned earlier about your environment and the density of where you live. Victoria and ACT, they have some of the lowest prevalence rates, but to balance it out and not have any kind of rivalry between the Mexicans down here and Sydney up there and Brisbane, inner East Melbourne has one of the hotspots in Victoria for kidney disease. So when you start looking at the whole effect of chronic disease and the socioeconomic scales, you start looking about how your future cities are being planned, future environments, who lives there and how do they live. It's really important that we take into the whole planning process how people are going to live with their disease, with their illness, and how are they going to access healthcare. Wealth buys health, and we've got to ask ourselves, is that fair? I personally don't think it is, but it's a fact and we have to deal with it. Changing tack a little bit, this is a bit more fun. We've got to ask ourselves about the relationships we have with our technology. It's all well and good saying we have technology and how we're going to use it, but if you think today, what do we do with it? Am I running out of battery or is my phone running out of battery? Is my wearable an extension of me? That's pretty obvious what this wearable does. It's a biological relationship. And then on the extreme end, you can have neurological relationships with your wearable technology. Now, this chap was actually on a documentary on SBS last year. This device poking out the back of his skull actually helps him perceive colour. He has extreme colour blindness. It picks up sound. And it doesn't actually translate the sound into a colour. He just perceives it through how he's learned. So this is the future. Things are moving on, and there was a chap last week, I think it was fined up in Sydney for his Opal chip in his hand or something. I mean, come on, people. This is where we're going. It's going to be different. And so these sorts of pioneers, if you like, are leading the way. And you can also get other things to help you manage your illness. So when we're looking at sensor technology and what can be done, the question with something like this is all well and good, right? The sensor's going to shut the door to your pantry, and I'm guilty myself. I looked on a BMI scale recently, and it had me about half a point away from being obese. BMI, is it worthwhile? Who knows? But the point is, we've got all this stuff, but is it going to make you actually do anything? So what we're talking about is behaviour change. And I think that's a really important part of how you, the audience, needs to start thinking about how we're going to start living in the future. My whole hypothesis is centred on people that are 10, 20, perhaps 30 years younger than myself, because the world is going to be very different then, and we can't necessarily fix today, but we have to start thinking about how we fix tomorrow and next week. So let's look at tech as the enabler and what's around there from a healthcare perspective. We're all aware of Fitbits and Garmin watches and Apple watches and things like that. But technology is moving into clothing, it's moving into implants, tracking things like stresses on metals and things in hip replacements, knee replacements. Mobile health applications and platforms for patient-generated health data is becoming more and more in vogue. This is both consumer and clinically driven. We've got artificial intelligence and machine learning looking at the data, and there's a lot more effort these days being put into prevention. Sadly not in Australia, it's a bit of a laggard considering that it's got one of the highest penetration rates globally of smartphones as an example, but it's probably 15 to 20 years behind the Northern Hemisphere in what they are doing with digital health. That's not something to be proud of. Gamification is there as well. It's around getting people engaged. It's getting people interested, because everybody in this room, including myself, we're all accountable for our own health. We can't keep expecting government to pay for it. We have to change how we look at health. We have to change how we think about our health. And we have to change how we actually react to our state of health. Don't leave it too late. Often people do, and certainly as an example with kidney disease, when they present with various symptoms and it's diagnosed that they have kidney disease, it's often too late. And something like 25% of those people require dialysis within 30 days. It's called the silent killer. Kidney disease is connected to things like hypertension, diabetes. If you've got hypertension, you're on medication, you're probably around about stage 3, and there's only 5 stages. The 5th stage is end-stage renal disease, which largely means dialysis, transplant, or a likely death. The choice is up to you on how we then manage that. This is some examples of some of the technology out there. A smart pill has recently been given FDA approval in the US. There are socks around for managing hotspots and how you move around with your feet. Diabetic neuropathy, people who have got sores, abscesses, people have amputations every week because of diabetes. The chest strap on the end is going through FDA clearance. It measures your heart rate, tells you what rhythm you're in, counts how many times you're breathing, all connected into the cloud. Then we've got the watch in the middle is a globally validated watch that measures blood pressure. It's in use here, it's in the NHS, and it's in the US. And then we have the screen on the right-hand side. It's a local company from a firm called Blocks Global. It's all around social isolation. And the products in the box there, it's like an Alexa, Google thingo-looking device, little tower called Safety Hub. And again, this is around social isolation and smart homes, connectivity. And what these do is they track behaviour, movement, that kind of stuff, all connected into the cloud, and it all helps the ageing population live a little bit better and easier. This guy here is on home hemodialysis. It's a very high-tech way of cleaning your blood, but he's at home. No big deal. We need to change the way we look at our health. And this is what's happening today. This picture, I think, is from Philips. So Philips have partnered with Salesforce in the US, and they've got this huge telehealth remote monitoring program over there. It's in play here. I was chatting to somebody at the weekend down in Apollo Bay who was Skyping his doctor in Geelong because his kid had gastro. It's very simplistic, but it works, and this is the way that healthcare will be changing. There's evidence behind this too. The CSIRO study showed a 42% length of stay reduction, 36% drop in hospitalisation, 24% annual savings. But the added bonus on this was that there was a patient-reported improvement in mental health and quality of life, and that wasn't even part of the study. Mental health is I think, top 6 chronic disease. If you don't have mental health issues and you've got something else, it's likely that you'll end up with some mental health issues. So you can see the scale of this problem. We've got a few stats here about the rise of the connected patient. So we've got 83% smartphone penetration. Use of wearables has tripled in between 14 and 16. And this is the important part here, is that consumers and doctors are agreeing that wearables help people engage with their health. And the difference here is not the fall in Fitbit stock prices because people have got bored of wearing them. My own thought is that if you are unwell and you're using a device to help you manage your health, your motivation is slightly different. It's proven that Fitbit step counts, for example, not specifically Fitbit, but it hasn't helped people necessarily lose weight. They just keep on moving and they stop. It's lots of other factors. And chronic disease is a lifestyle choice, and lifestyle is obviously affected by where and how they live. This is how things are changing through the digitalisation of health. Access to health via an application is growing. The difference being it needs to be clinically validated. It has to be evidence-based. It has to fit in with what your doctors and your nurses are doing to help you. Otherwise, they're going to have a very sceptical and perhaps cynical view of the data that it produces. Unfortunately, this is kind of true. We won't get into the debate about how good the internet is. But the thing with this is, on the more serious side, is that consumers have access to a lot more information. We've all had a go at Dr. Google, and I challenge you to tell me whether you really understand it or not. There are pros and cons around that, but the bottom line is that the consumerization of healthcare is starting to take place, particularly in the US and in Europe, and it has to start here. It has to start with the entire picture of how people are living and what their general well-being really is. So, can they enable better health outcomes? Yes, but a common word here, collaboration. Got to include consumers. We've got to close the gap between consumer demand and what the service provision really is. Services must be integrated and easily accessible by all age groups. And on that, I'll hand over to SONJA.
I think that's an excellent keyword, the consumers and the end users of products and services. I'm leading the Future Self and Design Living Lab, and I really want to suggest living labs as a mechanism, as a strategy for informing, for shaping, for building smart cities. But also I want to encourage that user groups, and particularly older adults, we are looking at older adults 55 plus, and that's a really, really big and serious stakeholder group, become a strong voice in the building of smart cities. And with Living Labs in Europe, the Open Innovation 2.0 is very, very closely connected. And when we talk about innovation, we talk about an innovation that really includes human-centered innovation policy. Innovation that focuses on adoption. Because there is no innovation without adoption. It's not enough to come up with something new or something promising or something that we think will be beneficial. If people do not take it up, it has basically no value. So in adoption really lies the secret in getting the future we want faster. And it helps to focus on what people really want. In our methodology, we also look a lot into emotions. How do people feel when they live in certain environments, when they take up certain technologies, when they take up services and products? And that is different on focusing on what people want than focusing on what we might think they need. And I'm not proposing that because I think that's really how we should treat people and find the best solutions with them. But it is really, as a consequence, it also has a huge impact on business, government, and people. Because it has been shown in Europe that scalable solutions are being achieved with living labs and in consultation with end users, and faster and richer innovation cycles. That solutions can be more personalized, better optimized, and affordable. As older adults, we are not becoming more similar. We are growing actually in our preferences, in our experiences further apart. How could we ever think there might be just one or two solutions to cater for the needs of older adults? And that needs to be taken into account when we think about cities, living spaces, and other environments. But also this approach of open innovation in living labs has opened up the way for new service provisions and new approaches. And the Living Lab concept really has been crucial in that it is one of the leading innovation platforms. And it can be applied on a very small or a very large scale. And I will give a couple of examples before I talk about the Future Self and Design Living Lab. And it is important here because it is increasingly applied as at scale for smart cities. When we look at living labs, you're probably familiar with this picture, then it has been grown from a European network of living labs, which is the red center there, where there are more than 60 living labs per country, to a worldwide applied strategy and method. Australia has now 3 accepted members of NO, the Future Self Living Lab being one of them. And looking at the benefits of being part of such a network is that you have access to all the knowledge, everything what Europe has learned about How shall we build smart city? How shall we look after older adults? We have real access to. We are closely collaborating with the with the Lab for Living in Sheffield. It has its 10th anniversary last year. We just had our 2nd anniversary. We are part of a transnational living lab on health, which has members from 5 continents, and we are also a member of the Australian Living Lab Network. But back to Europe, and the biggest living lab probably is the IMEC Smart Cities Living Lab. It is a large 3-city living lab, including 200,000 people. And this is really, really massive, the learning that's taking place there, and the amount of knowledge that is transferred between these 3 cities. Then as another example, the I always struggle over it. Kalasatama City Living Lab in Helsinki, which looks at a smart city. And they have really keen goals. They say, we will build services for the citizens in that lab that will save them 1 hour a day. Then we have also very small living labs, like the Bristol Living Lab, and they started off with this little device. This frog can measure dampness in buildings, and it was very, very cheap to produce, and they were able to saturate basically a whole city, the different houses and flats, with this little frog. And the first time they really got an image of where dampness problems in Ghent are actually taking place. And through the data they were able to collect, with the help of all the citizens, was a policy changer for the way building standards were done. But now to the Future Self and Design Living Lab. We are hosted by the Center for Design Innovation with a focus on older adults. We started off with 9 foundation partners last year, and we have about 18 active collaborators by now. Living labs really exist of a collaboration of researchers at universities, with industry partners, with government organizations, and most importantly, end users. We are, as I said, a member of the European Network of Living Labs. And our 2 big aims are increasing the quality of life for older adults via built environments, technology, and other products and services. And if you look at that graphic, it very extremely shows what we mean by increasing quality of life. We say we do not have to extend life expectancy anymore. We have done that for decades, probably centuries. People don't need to live longer, but the time they are living, they really should spend as healthy, independent, and should live their lives as they want. So that is one aim of the Living Lab. The other one is to be an advocacy leader for older adults, because ageism is a massive problem. And we are very happy that we are collaborating with the Council of the Aging. Victoria is one of our collaboration partners on this. I was mentioning before, we are looking very much into what people want. And this has led to a methodology we have developed over the last 10 years. If you look at it, it's an example from, and I want to give this example as a very simple project example we have done in the Living Lab on personal alarms and well-being checks. So the idea of a well-being check is there is a box in a person's home, and the person walks up to that well-being check in a time frame of 2-3 hours, presses a button, and basically communicates to a service provider, I haven't dropped dead yet. And it's a very easy to use, reliable service. It's giving us a lot of peace of mind to family members. The problem just is alarms are often not used, people fall and don't have their pendant, well-being check buttons are not pressed, and we were looking in more detail on what's the reason for that. And then instead of asking how satisfied are you with your service or how easy to use is it, we ask how does an innovative well-being check has to look like that you want to use it. How would you like to feel? And what people said, and this is something that comes up again and again, and that's not only goals for a well-being check. They want to feel in touch with other people, with their family, with their significant others. They don't want to feel cared for. They want to feel cared about. Yes, they want to feel safe, but not safe in the sense of that everybody knows when they went to the toilet last time. They want to feel independent, and they want to feel in control what is communicated about them and what not. If we look at these goals and take them seriously and develop a technology from it, then we probably do not come up with something like that. And that's actually myself, and I was wearing that alarm pendant for several days, and I'm pretty sure we all will take that off pretty swiftly after the conference. Who would like to run around with that the next months, years, everywhere? Also, what this picture shows really well, when we go in the homes of all the adults, it's a real interesting mixture of modern technologies and old technologies. We think about the most fancy, innovative technologies, and then we can't even find a PowerPoint to plug it in, because there are not enough in that flat. Or there come sparks out of PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint hasn't been used since the 1950s. So we really have to tie our ideas back into reality and see what are the home environments. And what we came up with was using an iPad. And an iPad is a very neutral technology. It's not screaming, hey, I'm really old, I need this device now. And ask a network of people to send a photograph with a caption once a day. And when that message arrived, the older person with the iPad on that wooden easel would get just an envelope message. And there was suddenly some interest, some anticipation. Oh, somebody has sent me something. I wonder who is this? Oh, it's my niece. Oh, good morning, Granny. It's my son. I'm looking forward to Saturday lunch with you. That is social interaction, that is caring. And technically, it doesn't matter at all if you walk up to a box and send that signal to a service provider, or if you send off that same touch from an interaction with an iPad. You don't have to send the content. That could be between the people who are sending it. But it makes a difference to the person, because people don't not press that button on the Wellbeing Check because they are old or have memory loss, because it has no meaning to them. And just out of interest, this box with a red and a green button, to say you're well, would you press the red button? If you think it's a red button, lift your hand. Would you think you have to press the green button? Lift your hand. You have to press the red button. And you want to know what the green button is for. That is, if you press the red button accidentally twice, you use the green button to cancel the second press of the red button. So, to conclude, innovation is not what innovators do, but what customers adopt, what they want, how they want to feel in using technologies, in using spaces. So what if we had living labs in Australia of this scale as it is in Europe? What if we had large-scale involvement from our citizens in these living labs and how they would like to live? Not everybody might want to live in a vertical village or in a silver tower. What if we made sure that involvement was really inclusive across age, ability, and everything? Because it is about the adoption. If we don't get people to adopt things, we are not really changing the life for them. Thank you.
Wow.